What exactly is a paragraph? According to the Word on College Reading and Writing, the textbook for this class, a paragraph is a group of sentences that present, support, and develop a single idea. So one paragraph, one idea. You may have learned in high school or somewhere along the way that a paragraph has to have 3 to 5 sentences, or it's not a paragraph. That's a rule of thumb. Some forms of writing, paragraphs are very short, maybe one sentence. You might read newspaper articles, for example, where there's only a one sentence paragraph. It varies with the kind of writing that you're doing. Generally, in research writing or expository writing, there is no limit on paragraphs. You can run into some really, really long paragraphs. I would not worry about counting the number of sentences. I would worry more about making sure that you have the 3 parts I'm going to talk about and that you're fully explaining the idea that you're trying to get across in the paragraph. You might also think of paragraphs in a larger sense as building blocks, in the same way that you'd use blocks to build some kind of a structure when you're a child, or the same way that you might use bricks to build a castle. You use paragraphs to put together a paper that communicates a much more complex set of ideas that come together into some sort of scheme. Often, the purpose of that sort of paper is to persuade someone or to inform them or to entertain them. In research writing, which is what we're focusing on in ENGL 030, paragraphs have a specific structure, a very basic kind of structure that gets modified with more experience, but at the very basic level, you need to have 3 things in a paragraph for a paper in this class. You need to have a topic sentence, you need to have support, and then an explanation. Those 3 things working together are how you communicate an idea clearly to the reader. So a claim is a statement. A statement could be a statement of opinion. It could be a statement of a debatable kind of argument statement, or it could be something that informs. In an argumentative paper, your claims need to be arguable, but I'll give you an example of each here so you can see the difference. So you need to make a claim, and that's kind of like a promise. I think of the topic sentence as a promise to the reader. If you read this paragraph, here's what you're going to find out. So that is often the first sentence in a paragraph. It doesn't have to be, but when you're starting out, that's a good place to put it, because as you get used to it, then you can play with the structure. So you have a topic sentence, and then that needs to be supported. If you think about a paragraph as a part of a conversation, if you say something to somebody that they don't necessarily believe right off the bat, or that they may find hard to believe, you'd need to support it with some kind of evidence. So just like in a conversation that's spoken, you do the same thing when you're writing. So you make a claim, and then you support it with evidence. And then, just like in that conversation, it might be that the evidence you provide isn't as clear to the person listening or to the reader as it is to you. Sometimes it seems like it's very obvious, but in academic writing, we want to make sure that we explain those connections. So it's important in the paragraph to take time to explain how the support proves the topic sentence and ultimately works to help support the thesis, which is the main point of the paper. Here's an example. This topic sentence takes a position, and what I mean by that is it's a little bit more arguable. This is something that we might want to debate, in other words. So my topic sentence is: the government should stress the benefit of wearing masks in public in order to cut down on the spread of COVID-19. That's me expressing my opinion. So in order to convince you that that's a true statement, or that's something that you should also believe, I need to support it. So I might say something like: experts with the Centers for Disease Control stress that mask use cuts down on the amount of virus in the air, which helps to limit transmission between people. You've probably heard something like that in the news with the pandemic going on, that wearing masks just helps to cut down on the amount of virus that's floating around. So I've made a claim and now I've supported it with evidence. How convinced are you? How convinced are you that I'm right? How much do you care about what I'm saying? Well, here's where you can really make a difference, and this is where the writer's voice, your voice as a writer, comes out when you're writing a research paper. So listen to my explanation. Here's my attempt now to link the support to the topic sentence. Although a mask does not completely eliminate the risk of getting COVID-19 from someone who is infected, like the furnace filter in your house, a mask stops or impedes a lot of particles that would otherwise pass freely into the lungs. Wearing a mask, a filter, over the mouth and nose is a simple precaution during a time of pandemic. If government officials stress the common sense aspect of mask use, maybe fewer people would think of wearing a mask as an infringement on their rights. That is what I mean by explanation. So my voice comes out because I chose that analogy. I chose the analogy of the furnace filter. That wasn't something that I read in the newspaper. It wasn't something that my wife said. I talk about using your own life experience, running this information through your own brain, and then stating it in a way that might make it easier for the reader to understand. So I like this idea of a filter. We use filters everywhere. We have filters in our cars, we have filters in our furnaces, filters, for our coffee makers. They're everywhere. So why wouldn't we wear a filter over our faces? Arguably the most important place that you could put a filter. So that is how I use that explanation. Even though the connection should be obvious to the person listening to me or to the reader, I can take that and make it even clearer or make it even more believable somehow by framing it in my own way. Topic, sentence, support, explanation. Okay, here's a second example. And this is a more informative kind of topic sentence. In Minnesota, a lot of people suffer from seasonal affective disorder during the winter months. So I stated that topic sentence in, just basically like a fact. But even though I say that, and it sounds like a fact, I should back it up. If I'm talking to someone about this, I can say that, but I might not convince them or persuade them that it's real, or they might not understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you some support now. After the summer solstice, which occurs on or around June 21st every year, the amount of daylight in the northern hemisphere steadily decreases due to the tilt of the Earth in its orbit around the sun. The day of the summer solstice is also known as the longest day of the year because the sun rises very early in the morning and sets very late at night. On or around December 21st, the winter solstice occurs. The winter solstice is also known as the shortest day of the year. Places closer to the North Pole experience less daylight as the winter solstice approaches than places that are further south. Now, as I read that, I was thinking, this is a very long-winded explanation that probably nobody would want to listen to in a conversation, but you can see how that supports my topic sentence. I'm starting to explain what seasonal affective disorder is during the winter months by talking about how there's less sunlight in the winter. Okay, so I do, in this case, really need to show how seasonal affective disorder is linked to all of this information about the solstice and the amount of daylight. So here's my explanation. In Minnesota, this means that there are 6 to 7 fewer hours of daylight in December than there are in June. This lack of sunlight can lead to vitamin D deficiency, which can cause mood disorders like depression. After the winter solstice, days begin to lengthen until the summer solstice when the cycle begins again. In short, Minnesotans are happier during the summertime and more likely to be depressed during the winter months because of the amount of sunlight they experience during those times of year. So again, I have topic sentence that's making a claim. I have support that is meant to back up that claim, and then I have explanation that is meant to link the evidence to the claim and back to the thesis. So again, back to where we started, paragraphs are a group of sentences that support, present, and develop a single idea. You can think of the presenting part as the topic sentence. I'm presenting the idea, making a claim. You can think of the support as the evidence in a research paper that might come out of a scholarly article or a credible documentary that you've watched or a textbook that you've read. The support. And then developing that idea is that explanation piece that links the support to the topic sentence. One paragraph, one idea. You can develop that idea as much as you want. The more development you provide, the longer your paragraph will be. And at some point, you need to stop because you don't necessarily want to have a paragraph that's 15 pages long. So think about those three parts and developing them to the point that you think the reader is going to understand clearly what it is you want to say, and then start with the next idea.